Thank you very much for your attendance. I'm Philip Lipsey, and I direct the Center for the Study of Global Japan at the University of Toronto. Welcome to today's event, Remapping Global Education in Japan. Before we begin, I would like to deliver a land acknowledgement. We wish to acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. After our panel session, there will be a Q&A session. Please use the built-in feature on Zoom to submit your questions, and we will try to get to as many of them as possible. I would like to now hand it over to Professor Rie Kijima, the Director of the Initiative for Education Policy and Innovation at our center and the organizer of today's event.
Thank you, Philip, for your opening remarks. I'm very pleased to welcome you to this very first event organized by the Initiative for Education Policy and Innovation at the Center for the Study of Global Japan at the University of Toronto. As Philip mentioned, I'm Rie Kijima. I have the honor of being the director of IEPI. I'm also an assistant professor at the Munk School of Global Affairs and Public Policy here at the University of Toronto. IEPI officially began in July 2022 with an aim to support education reform in Japan and beyond through the promotion of evidence-based policy initiatives with global impact. Over the last 6 months, we have supported education projects that employ human-centered learning designs for middle school and high school students in Japan, and we conduct research related to the operations that we do for students in Japan. This initiative is not possible without the support of Richard and Satoko Ingram, who made a lead gift to launch this education initiative at our school, and we're very deeply indebted to them. I would also like to thank the Consulate General of Japan in Toronto for their unwavering support of the Center for the Study of Global Japan, and we're very grateful for their generous support of IEPI and for co-sponsoring this webinar. Today's session is entitled Remapping Global Education in Japan. This topic came about from various conversations and interactions that I have had the privilege of having with each of our panelists today over the course of many years. This panel is largely inspired by their work to strengthen international collaboration, encourage learner-to-learner collaborations, and to conduct research to understand the promises as well as challenges of education reform with a comparative lens. We wanted to create an avenue to learn from their work and their efforts to put on the map the importance of global education in the context of education in Japan. So here we are today, achieving this very goal in our very first IEPI event. Now, it is my honor to introduce the 4 change makers, educators, policymakers, scholars of education who are with us today. I will ask them to briefly introduce themselves before starting their presentation, but I want to highlight their accomplishments and contributions to global education in the context of Japan, which is the topic of interest today. Dr. Gary Mukai is the director of the Stanford Program on International and Cross-Cultural Education, SPICE, at the Freeman Spogli Institute for International Studies at Stanford University. He works tirelessly to promote mutual understanding between young scholars from Japan and the United States, and encourage teachers who can foster creativity, as well as critical thinking skills among students to understand the role of history in education. For his contribution in the field of education, the Japanese government awarded him with the Order of the Rising Sun, Gold and Silver Rays in 2018. Dr. Keiko Okawa is professor of Graduate University Graduate School of Media Design. She's also the director of the Research Institute for Digital Media and Content at Keio University. She leads the Global Education Project in collaboration with UNESCO and partner schools and universities throughout Asia. She teaches the class Global Society, which includes project themes such as global education or global issues. Dr. Kazuaki Iwabuchi is an assistant professor at the International Center of Tokyo Metropolitan University, which is based in Japan. He earned his doctoral degree in comparative and international education from the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences at Columbia University. His academic interests include policy processes of internationalization of education and the politics of actors involved in such processes. So we're really excited and honored to have your presence, Dr. Kazuaki Iwabuchi. Last but not least, Mr. Kenshiro Hama is the vice mayor of Kyotango City, which is located in Kyoto Prefecture in Japan. After graduating university in 2011, he began his government career at the Ministry of Education, Culture, Science, and Technology, and has been involved in planning Japan's education, science, and technology policies at the national level. He's taking on the challenge to revolutionize Japanese education in rural contexts through the use of digital technology. Mr. Hama has a BA in economics from Waseda University, an MPA from New York University, and a Master's of Arts degree in education at Stanford University. So we are in the presence of amazing education scholars and practitioners who are with us today. I would like to stop the introduction at that there, but I would love to hand over the baton over to Dr. Kerry Mukai, who will briefly introduce himself and then share his presentation about SPICE's regional and eJapan programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Kijima, for your invitation to be on this panel with such distinguished panelists. I also appreciated Professor Lipsey's opening comments. I miss seeing the both of you at Stanford, and my colleagues and I sincerely appreciate your continued support of SPICE's Japan-focused online courses. I also think it's wonderful that the Consulate General of Japan in Toronto is co-sponsoring this webinar. So in addition to what Professor Kijima mentioned in her kind introduction, I'd just like to say I'm a third generation Japanese American with ancestral ties to Hiroshima Prefecture. With that, I'd like to share my PowerPoint. I'd like to, whoops. Are we okay? So I'd like to begin by saying that SPICE works primarily in 4 areas. First, we develop curriculum on globally focused topics, primarily for the elementary and secondary school level. Second, we conduct teacher professional development seminars for teachers in the United States. These are primarily for middle school teachers, high school teachers, and also for community college instructors. Third, we conduct educational research. Currently, a lot of focus is on our online courses. And then fourth, we offer online courses to students in the United States and also in Japan and China. And I'd like to focus my comments primarily on our online teaching. So at the high school level in Japan, we offer courses nationally, both in the United States and in Japan. And our first online course that we offered was 20 years ago, and it's called the Reischauer Scholars Program. It's a course about Japan and US-Japan relations that and we have an additional national course that we offer in Japan, which focuses on entrepreneurship. In addition, we offer regional courses in Japan, and we currently focus on 5 prefectures, which are listed here: Tottori, Hiroshima, Oita, Wakayama, and Fukuoka. And then we also offer city-focused courses in Kawasaki and Kobe, and we'll begin a new course for Kagoshima City this fall. Briefly about Stanford eJapan, which is the national course that we offer in Japan. We began this course in spring of 2015 with the support of the United States Japan Foundation. And currently, we offer spring and fall offerings. And the current supporter of Stanford eJapan is the Yanai Tadashi Foundation, which is based in Tokyo. We engage students in Japan with ambassadors, other government officials, top scholars, and experts like Professors Kijima and Professor Lipsey. The topics range from historical topics like World War II and include contemporary topics on trade, defense, politics, etc. And one of the unique features about this course is that for some of the virtual classrooms that are held via Zoom, students in Japan have the chance to interact with students in the United States, in some cases with students in the Reischauer Scholars Program. And each student is required to conduct an independent research project. And importantly, I'd like to share a few things about some outcomes and challenges. So in terms of the selection, it's always really challenging. It's very competitive. And we seek regional representation. We always have a high number of students applying from big cities like Tokyo, but we really try our best to seek students from all parts of Japan, and that is challenging. We have about equal numbers of public school and private school students enroll in the spring and fall courses. And we also try to make sure there's a gender balance among the students who are accepted in the course. And one of the challenges as well is that we enroll some students who are fluent in English, have lived abroad for an extensive period of time. And we also have students who've never left Japan but have strong English skills. And so sometimes this is challenging because some students who have lesser English abilities may feel a little intimidated by the classroom where there is a presence of students with fluent English skills. We believe that Stanford eJapan helps with college entrance. And students we know, many of the students we know, make a note of the fact that they enrolled in this course in their college applications. And one thing that has really stood out in this course over the years is that students who interact with the American student or the students who are in the United States really establish long-term relationships with students and with some of the scholars as well, with whom they interact in the course. Importantly, we do recognize the students with certificates, and we also recognize the students, the top performers in the classrooms in ceremonies, which recently have been conducted virtually, but in the past, and we hope to go back to in-person ceremonies later this year. But here are a couple of photographs of previous in-person events that were held at Stanford University, during which Stanford E-Japan honorees got together with Reischauer Scholars Program honorees. And here they're shown with their instructors. And this is the Consul General of Japan in San Francisco at the time, Consul General Uyama. So currently the Consul General of Japan in San Francisco continues his support of both the Reischauer Scholars Program and Stanford E-Japan. So with that, I'll conclude my overview of our online Japan-focused courses. Thank you, Professor Kijima.
Thank you, Dr. Gary Mukai, for such a comprehensive and really informative information about SPICE. Let's now move to Dr. Keiko Okawa.
Hello, thank you very much, Professor Kijima, for introducing myself. And I'm very happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me and organizing this session. So let me share my screen to introduce our project. I'm from Keio University Graduate School of Media Design. We call KMD. And KMD started 2008, and I'm leading a project called Global Education since its the beginning. And Global Education team is working to nurture global citizens who can design and contribute to the future global society. The activities and goals are basically the same for 15 years, but every year we discuss with students what and why we learn, what we learn, what we want to design with students. So every year we have some slightly different kind of motto, but this is the latest. So I'm enjoying working together with the students and faculty members and design for peer learners. The three major activities what we are doing is first fostering global mindset to face global issues. And we can teach them what the issues are because just by knowing it is not enough. So our mindset is quite important to let them face the global issues. And secondly, we're designing sustainable and innovative program for global citizens through many different ways, including games, design, or technology utilization, and also storytelling methodology and design thinking. So there are so many scholars developed frameworks. So we are kind of utilizing those theories to implement it to the field. And then thirdly, we are facilitating transformative learning and cross-cultural engagement. As you can see on the right-hand side slide, we work with kindergarten as well, and it is also not it's not easy in Japan, cross-cultural or diversity environment, because not many diverse environment is ready in here in Japan. So we try to connect to many places by technologies, like this is the Japan and France kindergarten's connectivity, and not only kindergarten, we work with an elementary school, like this. They're exchanging some art by utilizing drawing and a Padlet together, and connecting with the Asian countries like Thailand and Singapore or Malaysia. It's a real-time connections and exchanging arts. So those are the three major activities that we are doing in from kindergarten to university. Today I'd like to focus on the program called Global Workshop, conducting for the high school students in Tokyo. For high school students, we are running 8 times workshops in 1 year, starting from June to February, January, February timeframe. What we are doing is not teaching things, but let them experience things. And all the message that we would like to deliver is not delivering in the classroom by verbal, but more like delivering our passion to the materials that students can play with. You can see some worksheet or platform or materials that they play with. These are the things that we deliver to workshop tools to students, and students play around based on our instructions. So, for example, like awareness is not enough, but it's important, and let them find what they can do, and give them skills and confidence. So that is also exactly skill, attitude, knowledge. 3 major components are very important to go forward. We are trying to design 8 times workshop sessions so that they can acquire some practical skills, and they grow some knowledge about the issues, and also let them change a bit attitude as a citizenship of global citizenship. And this is some examples that these are the main themes starting from 2015. Every year, first year high school girls, which is about 100 or 120, and we conduct a workshop by getting all the helps from teachers as well as our students. And students includes a lot of foreign students coming to study in Japan, in KMD. So environment is diverse, and students naturally enjoy some conversation with our students from foreign countries and know some different cultures. And you can see some co-designing the games that the high school students are together designing games for sustainable development goals. And co-designing is one of the ways that we could utilize to let them be involved deeply. And also one of the skills are like a design of the video production, or that also give them a way to express their voice. And we encourage them to raise their own voice utilizing several ways, like hinamatsuri decoration, to show their thinking about SDGs to the world using Instagrams. And they're quite ready to say something at the end of the 8th series of the workshop. And these are the materials that we created for them to think about their own future, or imagine their future society. So that is something that we every year designing a new tools and try out and enjoying. But let me emphasize that we are emphasizing students' active citizenship, and it's not only a concept, but also what to do. It's explicitly instructed through the workshop, which is we care, you care, they care. The first thing they have to do is care something. And second thing is to start small. And three, keep it. Those are the keep it doing. Those are the three keywords that we deliver so that they can just simply remember, care, start, keep. And that is action that they can actually take. And that is going, we hope, to create a mindset of my open-minded and active and positive. Active citizenship is a kind of easy to remember action that they can take. But we tried many different things like eight sessions starting from the daily life to the world, and next year we started from the big picture to the daily life. So this is a kind of different way of organizing or facilitating them to starting from small to the world or starting from big to the small. Output is a little bit different. That was very interesting to see. So I think we have one more minute maybe. No, maybe no more. So this year we conducted innovation as main theme. And we are very happy to see all the 120 girls created their own output, utilizing the knowledge they got and skills they got, and utilizing, starting from the idea sharing and towards the project output. So let me stop here. Thank you for listening my activities. Talk to you later more.
Thank you, Keiko Sensei. That was really, really informative, especially the point about changing their mindsets. Really resonated with me, and I'm sure with the audience too. Let's move now to Dr. Kazuaki Iwabuchi. It'll be great if you can introduce yourself briefly and then proceed with your presentation.
Thank you very much, Professor Kijima. Okay, let me share my screen first. Okay, so thank you very much again for this amazing opportunity. And I feel really honored to deliver a presentation with notable speakers, other notable speakers. I'm Kazuaki Iwabuchi, an assistant professor at Tokyo Metropolitan University. So I just finished my doctoral study last year in comparative education. So I'm still a baby researcher, and I might talk a little bit too much about theoretical stuff, which I just learned. So maybe I just want to show off. So I hope you will bear with me. So today, what I want to talk about is education reform, particularly what makes it difficult to carry out. As the classic work written by Tayak and Cuban put, education reforms are repetitive and often seem meaningless to practitioners. So they describe the way the reform takes place using the word tinkering, and imply its sort of limitation as well as the incremental nature. So this is the general description of education reforms. Now I want to shift the focus to my own research theme, which is Japan's attempts to internationalize the education system. In 2011, the government announced the goal of 200 international baccalaureate schools. So at the time, there are about 500 IB schools, even in the whole region of Asia. So it was a very ambitious goal. And by doing so, the government aimed to produce human resources that can compete against others in emerging economies. And the outcome of this reform so far is that the government was able to install 72 schools after a decade passed. So you cannot say it is a complete failure. And also the reform is still ongoing, but it is not a remarkable success either. So I want to use this reform as an example of sort of the education reform. In the context of Japan, so these actors are important in the policy process, civil servants, politicians, and stakeholders or interest groups. So unlike other systems such as the US, civil servants not only implement what politicians draft, whether policies or laws, but civil servants in Japan, they themselves also engage in policy making and drafting laws. So their role is much bigger. But in recent years, executives play a larger role. So those executives include, for example, the cabinet, the prime minister forms, in other words, ministers. So they employ private counsel and shows blueprints for education policy. So these new political actors can work with new stakeholders, including emerging business leaders. So rather than taking time to make a consensus among diverse actors, this top-down approach could induce a larger change in a shorter period of time. And this was also helpful in the case of the IB reform. And these actors produce education reform, those three actors, and their interactions are under these three factors: interests, institutions, and ideas. So actors, of course, maximize their interests, but their behaviors are limited by institutions, which are both formal and informal rules. And so under the limitations of institutions, actors sort of do behave to sort of maximize their interests. But of course, at the same time, actors do not act only based on interests. They have norms, values, or the visions of what Japan should be like. So ideas play a crucial role as well. In other words, when these three factors, interests, institutions, ideas, align or are in harmony, education reform should succeed. And regarding the IB reform, two factors made positive contributions, but one had a negative influence. So there are resources that actors can tap into to achieve their interests. And institutional barriers had been removed, such as the restrictions of national curriculum. But so those two factors made a positive contributions. But there was an ideational gap. So this gap sort of served as a barrier, and which might have led to the limited success of the reform. And I think this gap could prevent other reforms as well. So it's worth unpacking the detail. And the ideational gap is simply whether the reform should be education for elites or more for the general public. So both standpoints, the one for elite education or for the general public, those two standpoints have pros and cons. Japan's education has been criticized for the lack of creativity or lack of room for individual freedom. So if you introduce different kinds of education for different groups of students, it would increase the options for students. So that was the rationale for the reform. And another rationale for elite education is that after all, only about 20% of the students will engage in the jobs using English, according to the estimate. So it doesn't need to be offered to everybody. And lastly, students already opt out of public schools to attend private elite schools. So to provide public elite education actually closes this gap. But of course, that is related with the con as well. If you do that, that might create inequity within public education. And now, pros and cons for education for the general public. So obviously, if you do that, it helps students from underprivileged backgrounds. And in fact, critical thinking skills and any other skills that the IB could offer are essential for everyone to survive in this era. And also it's helpful for to raise them as a democratic citizen. And Resnick 2012 also point out that dividing students into different tracks using the IB could do harm to the national unity. However, policymakers also have to think of the loss of the opportunities for students to access specific programs such as the IB by emphasizing too much on the program for the general public. So now I want to conclude my short presentation here. In summary, emerging new actors or less institutional barriers, particularly related with national curriculum, could introduce audacious reforms. However, ideational gaps, particularly around equity, remain unresolved. So we all need to keep considering it and give an optimal solution at every given time whenever the education reforms takes place. So thank you very much for your attention. This is all from me.
Thank you, Dr. Kazaki Iwabuchi, for that wonderful, insightful, and theoretical study. I think there's a lot to be learned about the process for reform from the case study of Japan that could be applied to other countries, and many similarities and differences that might emerge. So thank you for that wonderful presentation. Let's move to Mr. Kenshiro Hama. Hama-san, I cannot hear you, and perhaps it might be my audio, but I just wanted to make sure.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank
Okay.
you.
Hi everyone, my name is Kenshiro Hama, and I'm from Japan. I wish I could meet all you face to face, but I'm honored to be there. To here, we could still meet remotely. Allow me to share my background with you. I was born on a small island in Kagoshima Prefecture, Japan. In elementary school, I experienced 2 school transfers and 1 during my junior high school years, which means I experienced 5 different educational environments in my childhood. I believe that ensuring a high-quality education at the national level is the foundation of a healthy and productive nation. With this in mind, I chose to work for the national government, where I worked for Japan's Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology for 10 years. Then I further pursued my interest in the state of education worldwide by studying abroad. In culmination of those experience, I chose to work for a local government where I can be close to what is actually happening in the educational scene, and was dispatched to Kyoto City in Kyoto Prefecture as its vice mayor 2 years ago. Firstly, I would like to start with an introduction of my city. I guess some audience members here today have heard that I work in Kyoto. You may think, yes, I know Kyoto. There are a lot of beautiful temples and shrines, but where I'm is not quite what you would imagine when you think about Japan's old capital. Kyoto City is 2 hours away from Kyoto City. The population is about 50,000, which is smaller than the students' population at Toronto University. However, one of my friends from the US said to me, Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, and Fukuoka have been becoming more and more homogenized. But Japan still exists here in Kyoto. Kyoto City is rich with nature and is famous for its textile industry and engineering and metalworking industry and sightseeing industry. While it is true that being away from urban areas means that there are still abundant resources remaining. At the same time, it is difficult to physically access state-of-the-art educational resources that urban areas have, like cram schools, universities, museums, etc. In fact, there's no university around Kyoto City. Now, even in such a rural area like Kyoto City, educational transformation is beginning to take place in Japan through the Giga School initiative, which was kicked off by the national government 3 years ago. In order to realize individually optimized and collaborative learning, the national government implemented the use of digital tools in elementary and junior high schools. The original plan was from 2020 to 2024, but the plan was condensed from 2020 to 2021 due to COVID-19. In a sense, COVID-19 would not only bring about great change in our society, but also accelerated the change that would come in the near future. The educational field is no exception. In fact, Japan has been working on developing ICT infrastructure with the local governments as an initiative for a long time, but it hasn't been going well because of the diverse financial situation of each local government. Most of them are not in good condition, so they cannot afford to invest in developing their ICT infrastructure. I think all countries trying to develop ICT infrastructure in their schools to enhance their students' learning environment. Countries with relatively small populations have been working to develop their ICT infrastructure from an early stage. For example, Finland provided 1 device per student for free, like Japan. Other countries like Singapore, Denmark, and Estonia adopted BYOD, which means bring your own device systems due to financial burden. These countries established ICT environments early on, and recently have been striving to improve digital education contents, enhance their teachers' abilities, and streamline administrative tasks. On the other hand, in other advanced countries with large populations, the journey to develop ICT infrastructure is still underway. Many countries have not established 1 device for students. However, like Japan, those countries are also accelerating their ICT environments in response to COVID-19. Japan is one of the top countries in terms of ICT infrastructure development amongst advanced nations. Thanks to GigaSchool initiative, the provision of devices to all students is changing the classroom environments, regardless of whether the school is located in an urban or rural area. The picture on the left is quite old, but it makes the changes in Japan easier to understand. As a result of introducing the GigaSchool initiative, Japanese schools are exploring a shift from teacher-centered learning to student-centered learning, and from teaching to coaching by teachers. The typical style of Japanese schools prior to GigaSchool initiative was one-way teaching, same materials and same speed for everyone, limited interaction among students. Only a few outstanding students can express their opinions, limited feedback, often not in a timely manner. However, as many of you know, Japan has boasted a top-level education system up until now. This was due to the high ability and enthusiasm of its teachers. While building on these previous efforts, we aim to enhance education by utilizing digital tools and change the classroom so that the ideas of all students can be easily visualized on screen. Students collaborate with each other more easily. Students can adapt at their own pace and choose their learning materials. Real-time feedback is more common. Class can be connected with wider real society. Perhaps you may think that a classroom like the picture on the right is nowadays commonplace, but is it implemented everywhere at the national level in other countries? I think this is where I believe Japan stands out. Wherever the school may be in Japan, all of them are striving to achieve what is shown in the picture on the right. However, as I mentioned earlier, due to the sudden implementation of ICT environments brought forth by COVID-19, there are still schools that lack the ability to utilize their new technology, which poses a major challenge. Furthermore, the need to update devices every few years is also becoming a major challenge due to its cost burden. Thank you, Professor Kijima.
Thank you. That was extremely insightful, especially the usage of digital education to transform education in the city of Kyotango. Thank you so much. Now, we heard from all four panelists, and there are many common themes, but also divergent themes. And in this moment, I believe it would be really helpful perhaps to have further conversations about the role of education in global context. And I have prepared 3 questions that I'd like to pose to the panelists. And because of each person's background and what their expertise might be slightly different, I'd like each panelist to take 1 or 2 or even 3 combination of those questions and respond to them in the way that that speaks to them. So I am going to pose these 3 questions. The very first one is related to breakthroughs and innovations. What are some changes? We heard from Hama-san about the role of digital education, But what kind of trends do you observe? What are some of those innovations that are happening that really transforms learning in the classroom? And related to that, what makes reform challenging? What makes reform hard to implement? So that is my very first question. The second question is, in your view, what are the most important set of skills that students might try to gain to better prepare themselves for the future? I think this question is really kind of getting at understanding what kind of education system are we cultivating at the moment, and what are we aiming for in the future? In what ways do your programs or your projects aim to provide those opportunities for students to develop their critical thinking skills, collaboration that came up also in Dr. Gary Mukai's and Dr. Keiko Okawa's presentations, things related to global consciousness. Global mindset is a key term that came up. And or even pro-social attitudes and tendencies. What are we promoting education for? What kind of students are we hoping to educate, and what kind of society would we want to see these students thrive in? So that is my second question. The third question, which is the last question, is what kind of equity issues are there for students accessing the program or the reform that is being implemented? We heard the word equity in Dr. Kazuaki Iwabuchi's presentation. So what is it that government or even policymakers, even at the local level, what are some considerations around equity issues that we need to keep in mind? So those are the three questions that I'd like to pose to the panelists. And I would love for Keiko Sensei to respond initially. Is that okay?
Of course. Thank you, Professor Kijima. Three challenging questions. But let me not answer, but let me share my thought about number two, about skills, critical thinking, and attitudes. What the students have to learn. As I told in my presentation, there are some critical skills that give them confidence. And most important skills, I believe, is in a skill is that they know they learn how to learn, because they have to keep learning forever. And having fun in learning is quite important skills and attitudes. Not maybe not only skills, but having fun in learning will keep them learn. And that is most important, of course, in many ways, in many areas, in many ways. So the first one I'd like to emphasize, let them have fun learning. That's most important that we can share. And also, in order to change the attitude or mindset, it only it is not easy to change at once. So we believe that a small cycle of success experience by themselves changed, and or innovation or small things, so to realize small changes, small innovation can change the society. That's something that I would like them to experience as a success, and it can continue. So I really would like school setting or outside of a school setting altogether, give them an environment and freedom to try out and innovate, try and get some success, small success repeatedly. Of course, failure is a part of it, but we adults would like them to like to encourage their failure as well. So that's the second things which is addressing to the attitude. So what we can do is give them an environment and freedom and maybe psychologically safetyness for failure. Um, and that's my response to number two. And also, the situation is changing a lot, including COVID-19. We, as a kind of facilitator or adults or whatever senior, what we could do is try our best and show our passion. And for example, in COVID-19 situation, all the activities we continued in the COVID-19 remote. All materials were converted to remote and successfully conducted differently. Also, we gained the new value in remote. All the students are coming from their home. That means we could involve parents and families in our workshop. Schools are usually closed, but by connecting to home and families, they participated actually because the parents watching what their children's doing and they see it's fun. So why don't I join to the workshop? So that happens. So COVID-19 even was encouraging us to do something new. So maybe we shouldn't stop thinking or stop doing challenges. Maybe all we can do is show our passion to change the world. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Wow. It almost seems like COVID-19 was a challenge, but you turned it into some sort of opportunity that perhaps because of that, we were able to engage with more actors who are change makers in education, people we need in order to allow for change to happen within the system-wide changes in education, like parents and teachers and school principals and, of course, students. That was really, really insightful. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Keiko Sensei. I'd love to take the liberty of perhaps maybe asking Kenshiro-san to share his perspective about any of those three questions.
Sure. Let me share screen again. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm sure I can answer correctly, but I want to talk about related to question 1 and 3. In Japan, the percentage of high school students pursuing education in science and engineering fields is only around 20%, which is low compared to other advanced countries. Thus, there is a need to emphasize the importance of STEAM education for junior high and high school students. So Kyoto City recently has started a new STEAM education program by collaborating with a nonprofit organization and researchers from the University of Toronto and Stanford University. I think it is unusual for a rural city like Kyoto to collaborate with overseas universities to implement educational programs. This collaboration would not have been possible without the use of digital technology in our schools, which has become more familiar through the GIGA School initiative. Since Japan has only just begun to incorporate STEAM education, there are no established methods yet. Therefore, Kyoto City is collaborating with researchers who are familiar with STEAM education in the US, which has been developing ahead of Japan's. We are attempting to develop hybrid program with online and offline formats. One of the researchers working with our program is Professor Kijima. This program is exactly inquiry-based learning. Through the program, the participating students acquired new ways of learning, such as design thinking through dialogues with representatives from local STEAM-related companies, whom they don't usually get to communicate with in their daily life. The students have heard the stories from the local business people and craftsmen in school before, but they never had the experience of creating something together with them as equal through working dialogue. According to the program survey of participating students, while significant results were observed before and after the program, there were also items where no significant changes were seen. Moving forward, we will use the research findings to develop a program that can be self-standing in 3 years, self-sustaining in 3 years. We will also need to create a system for implementing STEAM initiative outside of the educational curriculum in school. This plan aligns perfectly with the national government policy because the National Curriculum Guideline has recently implemented the concept of inquiry-based learning. First, I'd like to share my thoughts related to the first question. I may have repeated these points many times, but the provision of one device per student in all Japanese elementary and junior high school was a major breakthrough for Japan's education. However, since Japan's curriculum training for teachers is not tech-based, not all schools nor teachers are fully able to utilize their digital technologies. To promote STEAM education, it is necessary to incorporate all sorts of talents into the educational field, and not just rely on traditional educators. In Kyoto City's case, which is geographically disadvantaged, digital technology becomes as essential part to bring in diverse range of resources. It is necessary for schools to view their devices as everyday materials like textbook, notebook, and pencils. Second, I'd like to share my thoughts related to the third question. I think most of you have been this photo before. In my experience working for both the national government and the local government, it seems that Japanese national government or the Ministry of Education tends to focus more on equality. However, this is inevitable because the national government cannot oversee all schools, which exceeds 30,000 in number. Local governments must make up for this shortfall, but it is also true that the further a city is from urban areas, the less financial resources local governments have to spend. Therefore, I believe that if local governments can utilize ICT to its fullest potential, we can achieve equity, not just equality, in Japan's education. As I mentioned earlier, even Kyoto City realized to connect to overseas researchers by utilizing digital technology. In addition, we implemented an English learning AI apps in Kyoto City to all second junior high school students. The app helps students with pronunciation and vocabulary to speak English confidently and clearly. According to the school's evaluation, not only has there been an improvement in students' motivation to learn English and test score, but it has also led them to enjoyment of expression and the development of confidence. I may be the one who need to eat it the most. If we don't have a sufficient ICT environment, we wouldn't have been able to approach overseas researchers like Professor Kijima or make use of apps. Of course, digital technology is just a tool or means, and it doesn't guarantee equity in everything. Therefore, while making good use of digital technology in order to secure equity in education, we always need to be aware of the difference between equality and equity, the division or roles between the national government and the local government, improvement of the quality of teachers working in Kyoto City, and the balance between majority and minority as we work in the public administration. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There are many concepts there related to equity and equality that you spoke about. I think the usage of digital technology seems to address the issue of access, perhaps to increase more students to have that knowledge. But the way in which you described the usage of digital technology was actually to enhance some of that learning that happens within the classroom, that it's actually a medium for equitable resource allocation. So I think that was a very novel, but a very important point that you raised. Thank you so much. Let's ask Kazaki-san Kazaki sensei to talk a bit about your responses to some of those questions that were posed initially.
Yeah, thank you so much for insightful, very difficult, but insightful questions. So I will share the screen again. I want to talk about maybe the first and second questions. What is the breakthrough, and also what kind of skills the students need to achieve. Earlier, I talked about the internationalization attempt in secondary education. So this time I want to focus on another one for tertiary education. Since 2011, around the same time as the IB reform started, the government strove to internationalize the tertiary education as well. And one of the initiatives was to encourage university students to study abroad. They set the goal of sending 80,000 students annually, and to assist with these students, the government expanded their national scholarship scheme. Remarkably, the government also installed a new mode of scholarship with the help of the business sector, which is called Tobitate Ryugaku Japan. So this form of public-private partnership is worth noting. It's a sort of a breakthrough. And at the same time, it is also interesting that this scholarship does not require students to submit any English scores, but project plan. So students are expected not just to learn language, but to engage in projects that they think are worth tackling, or social issues that need to be solved. So through this, students who have the potential to be a global leader are expected to be selected. So these are how this scholarship, the Tobitate Ryugaku Japan, is portrayed. And you can see the list of supporters, the private corporations here. So now I'm showing the trend of the number of students who study abroad between 2013 and 2020. So you can see the growth, the constant growth over the years, despite the the intercession due to the pandemic in 2020. But I think what matters here is that the goal of 80,000 was already achieved in 2014. But of course, the limitation is that the majority of those who study abroad still only attend short-term programs, which is indicated in this blue columns. And to think of the second questions about the student competencies, I want to show, I don't want to be too negative because other speakers show amazing examples, but I'd like to show the room for improvement. So this is the result of the survey that I conducted in a university among those who are interested in studying abroad. So in this survey, the number of respondents is rather small, but I asked them to pick one reason for studying abroad by region. So from the left to right, each column represents the reasons for North America, Oceania, Europe, and three different sub-regions within Asia, Northeast Asia, Southeast Asia, and other regions within Asia. So as you can see, actually, sadly, there are 30 to 40% of those who have no interests at all in Asian regions in this pale blue columns. So that is this volume is much higher than in the West. And even if I exclude those who have no interests, you can still observe another difference between the two. So those who are interested in Asia choose Asia not because of its advanced research or study, but mainly because of the, not mainly, but there are more people who choose Asia because of the practical reasons, such as the reasonable costs, which is shown in this yellow columns. So I think yeah, we've been successful to some extent in internationalizing our education systems, but if you look into what is inside, it is still a very, traditional West-oriented mode of internationalization. And I think this biased worldview is another limitation for Japan's internationalization or globalization of education. So we need to be aware of this inherent bias and revise curriculum or pedagogy or teaching practices in the future. Thank you so much. This is all. I will stop sharing now.
Thank you. Wow, quite insightful data there. I think it's quite alarming in many regards if many students feel that maybe there's not much interest in our neighboring countries in Japan versus the Western countries. And perhaps maybe there's, as you mentioned, some bias related to how students perceive their education in other nations, especially in Asia, might be perhaps not as preferable than the education or the study abroad programs that they might choose in the United States, Canada, or perhaps maybe in Europe. So thank you so much for that really interesting data. I think we'll need to dissect a little bit more. And as you mentioned, there are many policy implications of that kind of data. Thank you. Gary, may I ask you to respond to some of those questions that were posed through your eyes as director of SPICE?
Sure, thank you, Ria Sensei. When I first came to Japan to teach English conversation over 45 years ago, likely before anyone on this panel was born, I recall hearing concerns from parents about English conversation focused courses and how they would help their children with college entrance, because demonstrating conversational skills in English wasn't part of college entrance examinations. Concerning some relatively recent changes, breakthroughs and innovations that are happening in education in Japan, I think that the AO or admissions office, Nyushi college entrance path, which is a more holistic type of college admissions, is a promising trend. In a class that I co-taught in Tokyo last fall, graduate school students in the School of Education spoke passionately about the need for ways for students high school students to demonstrate their intelligence in areas beyond those that can be demonstrated on traditional written exams. For example, demonstrating skills in music and art and articulating their skills through interviews. Vice Mayor Hama noted the importance of creativity in Kyotango's collaboration with Sky Rabo. So I think it will be interesting to see if universities in Japan will consider increasing admissions through the Eiyo Nyushi pathway. The challenge, of course, is that it is more time-consuming and subjective. I believe that my colleagues at SPICE who teach online courses to high school students in Japan in national, regional, and also we have some school-specific programs help to enhance their students' applications to college in Japan and overseas. They do provide opportunities for students to develop their critical thinking and problem-solving skills, as well as heighten their awareness of global issues. I have had the chance to observe their students interacting with students in the United States. And I believe that this type of interaction helps students understand the importance of concepts like empathy and multiple perspectives. What Keiko Sensei mentioned about the importance of having fun really resonated in me. And I sense that these classes with students in the United States have been really fun for the students here in Japan. Over this past several weeks, I had the chance to visit SPICE's partner sites in Japan, and in many meetings, issues of equity and diversity, including the importance of engaging ethnic minorities and students from rural areas of Japan, were discussed. I also met with the staff of the Yanai Tadashi Foundation. And, we really encourage students in our courses to not only consider applying to Japanese universities, but also to universities abroad. And expenses for studying abroad, of course, as Kazuaki Sensei mentioned, is an important and critical issue. We also encourage students who decide to study abroad in places like the United States to consider applying to programs such as the Yanai Tadashi Foundation Scholarship Program and Tobitate, which Kazuaki Sensei also mentioned. So thank you, Ria Sensei.
Thank you, Gary Sensei, for those really insightful comments. I think the university entrance examination is something that many students, not just in Japan, but also in other countries, try to get in and be successful at so that they could have more promising life in terms of access to social capital, perhaps graduating from a particular university increases their odds of getting a high-paying job. All those aspirations get translated to examination procedures. And when you think about it, when you have 18, 19, perhaps 17-year-olds applying and your life is determined by the result of that entrance examination is extremely high stakes. The fact that perhaps moving into that AO system, that having an alternative way of entering university enhances student experiences in a way that's not just about how well you do on that entrance examination, but how you express yourselves, how you think about the things that you're passionate, that you can talk about that in an AO system. Perhaps it mirrors closely to what we might see in the United States or in Canada in terms of university entrance procedure, but moving in that direction and diversifying, not necessarily thinking that that might be the only and perhaps the best way to accept students, but diversifying how students enter university, perhaps maybe one step towards accepting and creating a more diverse, inclusive society, especially for these young students who have so much potential and that they don't feel so discouraged by not getting a test score that they want to have, and that kind of alters their life in the longer run. This was so rich, and I also echo some of the concepts that came up in terms of learning to be more creative, learning to be more insightful, artful, soulful, and that learning should be playful. I think those are also really important comments that came up in our discussion today. Now, I would like to open the floor to the audience for their questions. I know many of you have spent a lot of time listening to the panelists speak, so feel free to jot down your questions in the chat box, and we'll spend a few minutes going through some of the comments that the panelists have raised in greater detail. So as we wait for these questions to come, there's one question I'd like to pose, perhaps to Vice Mayor Hama-san, Ken-san, about this idea of implementing reform at the local level, which is a challenging feat. I think it's extremely difficult. But how you have garnered a lot of support in the work that you do. If you can share a little bit about how you mobilized, how you worked with change makers in the city of Kyotango to bring those reforms at the local level.
Thank you. I think it's a very challenging question because I'm still on the way, and most practical challenge is financial burden. But now I try to discuss with wider stakeholders like teachers, businessmen, and from the academia like Dr. Iwabuchi and Professor Kijima. It's the most important thing. I think it's the most important thing. Discussing again and again. What is the most important for children? But the practical thing is a financial burden. Now I work as a vice mayor, so I have I can authorize how to locate the budget, educational field or business field like that.
Thank you. The constraint seems to be always the resources, that there's not enough resources. Perhaps in order to bring reform, there needs to be an added budget that needs to be mobilized and resources you can use in order to enact change. But seems like that is always a challenge, and perhaps this is also a constraint going forward. Maybe the role of the private sector might help address some of those financial challenges that the public sector might have. And there are many modalities of public-private partnerships that we might find in other parts of the world. This also in the United States, Canada, and Japan as well, but perhaps maybe fewer cases in Japan. That might be one avenue to explore. But thank you. That's very, very insightful. There's one question from the audience that just came in, and we spoke a bit about reform at the primary and secondary level. Those are the majority of reforms that happen that focuses on the compulsory levels of education. Now, what about reforms at the tertiary level I think is the question from Alan from the audience. What do you think that those emphasis on cross-cultural dialogue, digital tools and infrastructure, those the notions of global mindset, could that also be fostered at the university or at the tertiary level? Perhaps maybe Keiko Sensei, since you are an academic working at Keio University and work quite a bit with university students, perhaps you might have some insights on that particular question.
Okay, thank you. Very interesting and important question. Thank you so much. And I have two things I'd like to share. The first, of course, we are changing. Actually, we are opening universities to the world. And in graduate school that I'm working on, KMD, has more than 60% coming from outside. And Japanese students are kind of minority now. And the things that we face, the issues that we have faced is not the university students, more like faculty members and the university administration side are not ready yet somehow. For example, like we actually Keio University started 150 years ago, and of course focusing on how we educate Japanese people for Japan for a long time. So mindset is for Japan. Education is for people, our citizen and good citizen in Japan. But now we have to shift our mindset. Not only the local people, I mean, national, not only for the national nation that I belong to. We have to shift our education target to the global people. And then naturally it changes how we interact with students, how we think about it, what the university education should be. So the demography is all already changing in Japan. So we have to change myself. We can't educate only for Japanese society. That is one. And another thing is university students are already close to the society, and they have to be ready to go out. And in that sense, cross-cultural or global mindset, why they need it. The presentation that I heard today, not many people will use English after graduating in Japanese university, that Dr. Kazu pointed out. So we emphasizes students the importance of communication with a global place. For example, we are having a university collaboration among Asia Pacific regions, and about 10 universities are trying to foster that environment that really require collaboration, especially in my own special area, internet infrastructure development. The network engineers has to communicate to create an internet environment. That's a must. So there are so many places that they have to must to use. So we are trying to let them experience before they go out from the university. So those are the two things I'd like to share. What's happening in here, in the field.
Thank you. Kazaki sensei, do you also have some insights on this question about reforms at the higher education level?
I think Keiko Sensei's overview was already amazing. As she said, I think the university needs to be open to many aspects, to the students from other countries or to the society, and I think that's what the university is doing. And also, as Hama-san mentioned before, that the public-private partnership with the business sector or industry, I think that, but it's still underway. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Any other questions from the audience? If not, perhaps maybe the panelists, if you have any questions for each other, this is also a good opportunity to ask if you have any.
Can I ask question to Hama-san?
Mm-hmm.
I'm impressed by Hama-san's presentation, how we reforming. And Hama-san mentioned the teacher has to change their mind from teaching to coaching. Is it successfully done now, or is it on the way? Or how do you encourage them to change their role?
Yeah, thank you for thank you. I think it's still on the way because the concept of teaching is still old at the school level. So now at the national government level, the Ministry of Education try to change the thinking way of teachers now. So now it's on the way. But I think it would be accelerated due to the implementation of the ICT technology.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we're right at the 8:30 mark. It was just so wonderful to have all of you panelists, just really great, insightful information and discussion about the role of global education in Japan. I really thank you for your time in putting together such informative slides and presentation and for this rich conversation that we must continue in the future. And I know there's another question in the Q&A which we can't get to for the moment, but we hope that further discussions around IB reform and education reform, we hope to discuss perhaps in another webinar in the future here at the Center for the Study of Global Japan. So please join me in giving everyone, the panelists, a round of applause. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
Thank
wonderful
you.
discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Gary Mukai. Thank you, Vice
great.
Mayor Ken Hama-san. Thank you, Professor Kazaki Wabuchi-san, and thank you, Professor Keiko Okawa-sensei. Really, really wonderful to have you today.
Great to see you.
Great to see you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.